Okay, this is a testimony meeting. It's an informal meeting. Everyone is invited to participate. So one question I have is, have you been listening for a while? Obviously, you've gotten a flavor for what's going on around here, a flavor for what God can do for you, His great love for you. Have you had an experience that you'd like to share? We would love to hear about it. So testimonies can be shared through the teleconference. And for those of you who are on the teleconference, when you're ready to give your testimony, please make sure there's no background noise where you are, and then press star 1, and you'll hear the acknowledgement message that your hand has been raised, and when we're ready here for you, we'll call on you. And now I'd like to open the meeting for sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science.
Well, I'm very grateful for a quick healing after visiting my dentist this week, thanks to God's great love and practitioner prayers. After my teeth cleaning, the dentist said he wanted to take an x-ray and examine it for a possible root canal. And he said he would call me later. Well, I was concerned, and so I called practitioner and explained the situation. The practitioner reminded me that my teeth were rooted and grounded in love, and also to be sure that I'm radiating, not absorbing. I can't become infected. And also a couple of other wonderful truths, that there is no spot where God is not. And then was asked to read in Miscellany the article, What Our Leader Says, and in Clear Correct Teaching, an article called Infection. Well, my thought was so uplifted and filled with positive expectancy after talking with a practitioner. And without a doubt, I knew that God was in control, because the dentist never called me, which means everything was fine. I mean, it was just so wonderful. It was so much proof that God was right there working. And the healing was there, and I just thank God for His great love. It's always there, and for the prayers of the practitioner. I'm just so grateful. And thank you for those wonderful readings, too.
Thank you. Jim from Arizona, go ahead.
Good evening. Last week, I went over to Home Depot and bought a few items, thinking I could use them in a project. However, when I got them home, they were not satisfactory. So last Saturday, I decided to return them to Home Depot. Everything went fine, and they credited me with my refund. And I walked out to the truck, and behold, I did not have my keys. It was the only stop I had made, but I had an extra set of keys with me, so I used them and went home. And as soon as I got home, I called a practitioner from our church, and the first thing he said was, God knows where those keys are. And there is nobody that is dishonest. So I quietly sat down and studied on these thoughts, and the inspiration came to me to check the truck once more. And the first time I ignored it, but it came to me again. So I went back out and I checked it. The keys were not there. However, I did find the registration for the truck. It had fallen between the two seats, and it's been there for over a year, and I need that. So I put it in its rightful place. I went back and got busy, and the thought came to me, and I think it was 3 or 4 times, honesty is spiritual power. Then the inspiration came to me to go over to Home Depot. And I arrived, and I had the extra set of keys, and they were almost identical to the first set. And the girl looked in her lost and found box and found nothing. And another girl about 10 or 12 feet away, over her head, she jingled a set of keys. They were my keys. And as I left, I had to tell the girl, I must say thank you, Shepherd. And that I did. I am so grateful for this, and also I am so grateful for the prelude. It was so fitting for the beginning of a Wednesday evening meeting. Thank you all.
And thank you. Linda from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you very much for the readings. I would like to express my gratitude for the blessings and healings that's permeating all the areas of my life since I've been working with a Plainfield practitioner. Sometimes some of these things have happened without her even knowing the particulars of a situation. Tonight, I want to share one thing that took place a few weeks ago. My teenage son has struggled with anxiety since kindergarten, and it's been especially challenging at school. And he was recently preparing to take a guitar test in front of his peers, and that can even be more challenging for him. And so the symptoms started to surface and were building up over a few weeks, and then they escalated the weekend before. We have sought many types of traditional help that you might use for this situation, and so I was accustomed to thinking along these lines, and often this would also include making other arrangements, maybe going through agitation with him, or a shutdown. So I started to ruminate how I was going to solve this one. Partway through the process, I realized that there's no God in this, and I stopped the negative thinking and seeing wrong, and so I stopped worrying. But the biggest part also was how I was seeing him. And I thought, the most important thing I could do right now is see him as God sees him, and God certainly wasn't seeing him as a struggling, limited mortal that had great fear, but a beautiful, free child of God. And so I started to fill my thoughts with psalms, a lot of the ideas I was learning, the prayers my practitioner, she has been teaching me, and with God. And as I turned my thoughts to the spiritual good, I began to feel God's presence and peace. And I stopped planning, and then I just got busy. And a short time later, my son announced to me that he was fine and did not mind taking the test, and the symptoms just vanished. They evaporated. And it was so beautiful and very sweet and tender working out. And I was very awed by the whole thing. And he did take the test next day, as if nothing had happened, and did beautifully. And I just am so grateful for everything that I am learning and gaining here. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. The Moores from Georgia, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. This is Tony. Linda, that testimony was wonderful, just awesome. It just reminded me of something, just how quickly, when you rely on the science, we demonstrate. And it's just awe-inspiring. I called a practitioner in this church because I was having, I guess you could say, kind of a mental problem. I wasn't feeling right. I wasn't clear. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I could tell when I tried to pray, when I tried to do any work, I just felt a fuzziness. I just couldn't seem to break through, and so I called and he uncovered something quite quickly that I was not addressing a problem that I had uncovered. In fact, I was turning away from a problem and not handling it. And I couldn't believe how quickly this situation turned around as soon as he pointed this out. I looked on the website to our watch this week, and I should know this, I posted the watch there, but I missed it myself. Here it is. Watch lest you run from error, such as an animal runs from a hunter. And when we look at our lesson this week, Mrs. Eddy says, obedience to truth gives man power and strength. Submission to error superinduces loss of power. And this is exactly what I was feeling. I was running from a lie, which means I was accepting it. And I don't have to go into the details of what it was, but the point was, as soon as this was brought out of my thinking, I immediately separated the error from the situation. As we learn in science that evil is not person, place, or thing, so I worked on separating and then getting rid of that which was untrue. And I faced it, and I'm facing it down. And as I did that, the clarity came back almost instantly. And I'm just so grateful. I wanted to give my gratitude to the practitioner for uncovering, spotting this, for here it is in the lesson. This is just an incredible science that we all have right here, right now, to prove and demonstrate. And I'm very grateful that I'm able to take my first steps in this science and begin to prove it for myself. And thank you for those readings tonight.
Thank you.
I received an email the other day thanking me for my contribution to the forum this week, and all I could reply was, I think it is great that not only does God show us what we need individually, but also has given us this church so we can share and learn from each other. What a blessing for all. It's plain to see if you look at my life before I came here that I didn't know much about truth or love. It was only through great suffering that the door opened so I could even begin to understand it. Now that this door is open, I will do all I can to keep it from shutting, and it's easy to tell on these Wednesday nights that we all feel the same way. The very fact that we have the website and the forum and the roundtable, Bible study services, unity watches, practitioner support, and everything else is indeed many blessings. But they are also a call to action for each of us that we all do the work so they remain a blessing. All of this didn't come without demonstration, and it will not remain without constant demonstration from each of us. It doesn't fall to some hierarchy, it falls upon all of us to listen with spiritual sense and act as He directs us every single day. To me, that is absolutely wonderful because it is undeniable proof that we are all useful and important to God. I'm so grateful that God has brought all of us this truth and made it accessible and usable and shareable so all may benefit. There are many out there right now waiting for their door to open, and the work we do just might be what brings that about. For someone such as me who so recently felt locked out, that is the most wonderful work I could imagine doing. And I pray every day that I never lose the gratitude and joy I have working for God.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful for a Bible study that we had recently. In it, the practitioner talked about wisdom, using wisdom. And that really struck home with me. I really understand now that the first thing that comes out of my mouth is not always from God. And I have to stop and I have to ask God, is this from you? is this what you want me to say, or is this what you want me to do? And not just go ahead with whatever comes first to thought. It's not always from God, and that was quite an interesting thing that I needed to learn, and I have been watching ever since, and my goodness, it's so helpful. I know that whatever I say or do now is going to be a blessing because it is coming from God. And it's totally unselfed. It's totally God speaking, God using me. And that's what it's all about. I am so very grateful for this church and so grateful for all that I'm learning and for practitioner help. It's just a marvelous place to be, and I am so grateful for it. And thank you, girls, for those readings.
Thank you.
Dale D.
Dale D. from Maryland. Go ahead.
I'm a relative newcomer. I appreciate very much the Bible lesson and roundtable discussion. A recent example where that helped me was pointed out that we can get wrapped up in metaphysics, think we can redeem ourselves, when in actuality we're building up a selfhood apart from God and defeating the purpose of being more receptive to the Christ mind. This has been a great help to me. I experienced a healing over the course of the last few months. I usually go to the website and an article off the carousel by Martha Wilcox, Idealism versus Realism. And in reading that, the Holy Spirit did come upon me and my symptoms lifted. An example of this in picture form, Christ in Christmas, the poem. In several of the pictures, there's a 7-pointed white star and light is pouring in through a window. And we humanly keep the windows clean, but it's going to be the Christ light that comes through and does the healing. And I experienced this during reading the article off the website. The members of the church, I think you're doing everything you can to be receptive to the Christ light, and it's been a blessing to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to share the blessing that I had recently. I was, my car, it was time to change my car. And I've been thinking a lot what I was going to do, if I was going to keep it or I was going to trade it for another one. And I went over there, so the decision was to lease a new car. And, sometimes it can be a little bit confusing because there are so many cars to choose from. And they showed me so many options, but I couldn't be able to figure out which one I want. But I knew I want something special, but I couldn't be able to find it. But thank God, God provided a car that I actually love. Immediately I saw that car. To them, they have sold a lot of that car except one that was left. And I believe it was left for me because it was not only that one car in their parking lot, and it was the best color that I wanted. And immediately I saw that car, I said, that's what I want. Already I don't even know what I want, but I saw that one, I said, this is it, this is what I want. And I got that car. When I was filling up the documents, I have put our church as one of my places of work. And during the conclusion, and the gentleman looked at my paperwork, and they wanted me to pay for my first payment. I'll have to make it. So as I was getting my credit card, then he looked at it and he said, "Oh, you work for the church?" I said, "Yes." Then I asked him, "Do you know our church?" He said, "No," but he said, "I know God." Then he gave me a book from his office. I looked at the book. It was a book about God. He said, "Yes, I told you I know God." Then he asked me, "Do I know God?" I said, "Of course I do." Then he told me to put back my credit card and he's going to pay for my first month payment. And I was so surprised and happy. It was such a wonderful blessing, a wonderful moment for me to be able to share that moment with somebody. And I am so grateful to God for that, for the privilege and for His love that fills every space and every heart. And we can share them. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth from Georgia, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to give gratitude for what I'm learning at the Plainfield Church, particularly the clarity of the weekly lessons. I used to really prefer the ones on life, love, truth, spirit, God, the only cause and creator, all those nice, safe, feel-good topics. And the lessons over the past few weeks are the ones I used to dread, such as Doctrine of Atonement and Probation After Death and Everlasting Punishment. And I think it was probably because I didn't understand or think they applied to me, and I used to gloss over them. But I'm realizing they're so important, and I'm learning so much with these topics. The lesson from this week on everlasting punishment has just been very clear on the importance of being obedient to God, which keeps us safe. And literally every citation chosen has been what I needed to read and ponder this week. So it's been a wake-up call to read these lessons, and thank you to those who are writing them. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Several months ago, I went for a walk, and I was probably about 1.5 miles from my house, and I hurt my ankle. And I was it was like, oh no, what am I going to do? And the thought came, well, God is good. This isn't good, and it's not from God. And then the words from a hymn, I walk with love along the way, and oh, it is a holy day. And I thought, yes, it is. And I just could feel God's presence with me. And I started walking. At first, it was a little limp, but within a very short time, the whole thing was healed. I'm just so grateful for all that we have here that we can use, and for learning to turn to God for every situation, no matter how big or how small it is. I'm so grateful for the teaching that we're receiving, practitioner help, and thank you for the beautiful readings tonight. It's such a joy to hear everyone all over reading our wonderful Word of God. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to share a blessing that I had a couple of weeks ago, and it actually came from our roundtable discussion that we had then. But to lead up to it, this church found me when I had a huge need, and I'm thanking God that He brought me here. But after I got here, I discovered that my greatest need was character reformation. I needed to see myself as God's image and likeness and I needed to address each of the things that would say otherwise and boot them out. And often I didn't. And as a result, I ended up I found myself resisting the progress that was needed for me. There's a statement in Science and Health that says that truth urges its resisted claims on mortals. And I found that when there was a claim of truth, and that's something good, something that I should incorporate into my thinking and actions and everything else, I found myself resisting them. Well, I knew from our teaching that when that happened, to recognize that it was just the devil trying to hold me in a position that was absolutely no good for me or anyone else, and that I had a divine right to boot it out. But still, it kept on going. And there was one thing that I heard on the round table 2 weeks ago when it talked about meekness. And that was that the definition of meekness is really one that's a fluid. When you pour a fluid into a vessel, it just conforms to the shape of the vessel. Without arguing, without complaining, without resisting, it simply does it. And this is the model for our compliance to the divine demand. There is a way to comply with God's demand, and it's to recognize ourselves as His image and likeness, and that we do indeed obey, comply, like that fluid that just conformed to the right shape without any resistance at all. That's the model in mind regarding each and every one of us about our compliance to the divine demand. I'm so grateful that this came out because it hit me right between the eyes, and ever since then I've been holding that model in thought and found it very helpful. I wanted to thank the one who shared it because I've been benefited from it. Thank you. Suzanne from Vermont, go ahead. Okay, Suzanne, we're not hearing you. You may be on mute where you are, but you're clear here. Go ahead.
Hi. I wanted to express my gratitude for a practitioner in this church. A few weeks ago, I took our dog to the vet, and she had a limp, and the vet found what was believed to be an infection in her paw, in her toe, and it was quite inflamed. And so I went back to the vet, and it was still a week later, and it was still kind of in the same condition. So the practitioner gave me something from the Eustace book, Christian Science, Clear Correct Teaching, on an article on infection. And it says, infection is mind imparting itself to its idea, imparting its very name and nature, infecting its own expression with life, purity, and perfection. This is the one and only infection. And it goes on, but that was really a wonderful and radically different idea of infection. And she also gave me other things, including in the Martha Wilcox book, The Word Made Flesh, where a horse is healed. So I've been working with these different articles, and I had another appointment today. So I called on Monday morning, the practitioner, and the first thing out of my mouth was, I'm focusing on the dog and the toe and healing. And she right away corrected me and said, "You focus on God." And boy, was that a great thing for me to hear. And it just lifted me up. And all day long I said, I'm focusing on God. And it was just the most amazing turnaround in my thought. And so what was the most wonderful thing about this whole experience is correcting my thought. It's just take the focus off the dog and what's really going on here. And in the article, "The Word Made Flesh" by Martha Wilcox, it's beautifully written. I recommend it. But it's all about the horse did not need healing, but Mrs. Eddy was restoring our vision to see the truth or the fact that the only mind present was aware of its own perfection. So anyway, we had another appointment today, and the vet was so surprised that the paw had dramatically improved. And I'm so grateful for this progress, but mostly for the practitioner help and the growth and the spiritual growth happening. And I must say I resisted for years working with a practitioner. I guess I just didn't think I needed it, or just was afraid to call, or there were a million excuses. But when one experiences spiritual growth, and as I have, it is so wonderful. And anyway, I am grateful to this church for upholding Mrs. Eddy's pure Christian Science, and for the gift that is to the world. And I'll just stop there. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful.
Thank you.
The word stagnant was brought to my attention recently. It's not a good thing either for a river or for anything to stop flowing, for a person individually or a group collectively to become stagnant. The definition of stagnant is to cease to flow. So I was thinking about that this week, and I was thinking how really the love of God is like a river. It flows. His love flows to us, to his creation. And in that flowing, we receive it, and we receive a great blessing from the Father's love. And it would cease to flow or stagnate if we didn't give it out to others, if we stopped sharing it. And that, of course, would be very bad, and it would keep it from moving. This has meant a lot to me because I feel the church here gives so many avenues for us to express God's love, to give it back to the world, to our neighbor, to each other. Of course, there are many, many ways to do this, and it isn't only confined to church. But I'm grateful that we have these opportunities, as we've heard tonight, for our spiritual growth, to get closer to God, to learn how to demonstrate, whether it's the readings on a Wednesday night, as we've heard, or giving a testimony, or in contributing in a class, or in many other ways that those of you are doing, taking active part in it. It keeps the flowing going, so to speak. It keeps the love of God flowing to us and then out to bless all mankind. And with that, I turn to this hymn, number 182. Make channels for the streams of love where they may broadly run, and love has overflowing streams to fill them every one. But if at any time we cease such channels to provide, the very founts of love for us will then seem parched and dried. For we must share, if we would keep, that blessing from above. They cease to have, who cease to give. Such is the law of love.
Thank you.